Good morning, everybody. If you could start finding your seats, we're going to start in a few minutes. Please start finding your seats. Thank you.
Since 1955, the National Museum of Racing has recognized and honored the achievements of those horses, jockeys, trainers, and pillars of the turf whose records and reputations have withstood the test of time in the great sport of thoroughbred racing. This class is no exception, as the achievements and legacies of these racing legends have proved to be essential to the sport's rich history. Welcome to the 2019 National Museum of Racing's Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest race callers and most iconic personalities in the history of the sport, Mr. Tom Durkin.
Is my halo on straight? I don't know. First of all, before we begin, shut off those damn cell phones. That taken care of. My job here this morning is to get you out of here so you have time to bet the double. And doggone it, I'm going to do it. The Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame were founded back in the 1950s by a group of owners, breeders, and influential industry people, because our sport needed a Hall of Fame, a national museum as well. But this group of people with names like Belmont and Vanderbilt and Whitney, Phipps, Mellon, and others did not want to build a pantheon to themselves. So in the bylaws written by the founders, they wrote themselves out. So as the decades passed on, and in fact many of the founders passed on, it just didn't seem right that the Hall of Fame should ignore the accomplishments of these giants of the turf, these pillars of the turf. So a few years ago, the powers that currently be decided to do something about it. So we now honor the pillars of the turf. Now, technically, we are not disobeying their wishes, because technically they're not in the Hall of Fame. Their plaques are on the wall 6 inches from the Hall of Fame. So today, along with enshrining Royal Delta, Waya, My Juliet, and Craig Perret in the hall, we honor 12 pillars of the turf. This morning, we're going to see some great horses by way of videotape, and some great people as well. But first, on July 19th, Mary Lou Whitney, a pillar of the turf, and so much more, passed away. Let us now observe a moment of silence in her memory. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce John Henriksen, her husband, and the president of the Hall of Fame.
It's going to be a hard day. But on behalf of the Board of Trustees and staff of the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame, I want to welcome you to the 2019 induction ceremony. And to get to business, as many of you know, we are in the midst of a complete renovation of our Hall of Fame. When completed in the summer of 2020, I believe we will have the best sports Hall of Fame in the country. And I want to thank everyone who has contributed so generously. We are well over halfway to our goal of raising $20 million for this educational project. Here is a short video describing the new Hall of Fame. Please give what you can. Our sport deserves it.
Imagine a theater designed to take you to the heart of the story. A must-see destination that first immerses you in the glory and excitement of thoroughbred racing. Now imagine that theater alive. At the center of the story is the horse. Scenes literally immerse the audience in the magical atmosphere of early morning on the farm. A second set of screens draws the audience even closer to the story. We are off to the races, and visuals explode with racing action and the vibrant colors of famous silks. In a transformative moment, a 360-degree screen places the audience at the center of the story, surrounded by the color and pageantry of the sport, as scenes expand to the larger world of thoroughbred racing. The fans, the media, the pillars of the sport, and iconic personalities. Finally, the theater delivers the audience into the very presence of the greatest of the greats of our sport, those who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Imagine a state-of-the-art interactive Hall of Fame where just a touch can transport visitors deeper and deeper into our incredible story.
Son, I love you too.
My mom and daddy.
Who are no longer with us.
I went through here to see what I accomplished in my life.
Calvin, I can't.
Kentucky Derby for Chenery. It was
into the Racing Hall of Fame in 2003. You didn't feel like you had accomplished enough yet to belong. Do you feel like you belong now?
I've been so blessed. Yeah, I belong now.
It's time for the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame to take the lead. We need your support to cross the finish line. Go to racingmuseum.org to donate. Thank you.
Next summer, this place is going to be jumping. It is going to be, this is the most exciting thing to happen to the museum since we laid the cornerstone in 1955. It is going to be unbelievable. Many of you have been to the Kentucky Derby Museum where they got that big surround thing. This is going to be that on steroids. And it's going to be great for the town. It's going to attract people from all over the country. And John, congratulations to you for getting it done. Right now, I'd like to introduce the chairman of the Hall of Fame nominating committee. You all know Edward L. Bowen.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to introduce the returning Hall of Famers. And when I think of the Hall of Fame, I'm often reminded about that great saying, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. But I never knew who said that, so I looked it up. It's attributed to an ancient Roman philosopher known as Seneca the Younger. Then I found something else he wrote that even sounds like more of the Hall of Fame. It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness. This guy would have made a heck of a sports writer. Anyway, the rough road that has led to the heights of greatness has been traveled by the guests that we're about to introduce. They took it one step farther. Not only did they follow the rough road to get there, but they kept the heights of greatness sustained. And I think they probably would agree that that was not an easy road either. Anyway, it's a great pleasure to introduce them. Please, when you hear your name called, come up and line up here. I think will be a photographer afterwards, so please line up kind of in the front here. And if you need to jostle for position, it won't be the first time for some of you. So anyway, and to the degree that it's humanly possible, please hold your applause until everyone's been introduced. First up, Jerry Bailey, class of 1995. Come on up, please. And Shug McGahee, class of 2004. Javier Castellano, class of 2017. That has nothing to do with last night's basketball game, but he's pretty good there, too. Nick Zito, class of 2005. Raymond Dominguez, inducted 2016. Sandy Hawley, class of 1992. Carl Nafsker, class of 2008. Jose Santos, elected in 2007. Julie Crone, class of 2000. Early Fires, class of 2001. Jerry Fishback, 1992. Gary Stevens, 1997. Angel Cordero, Jr., class of 88. Jonathan Shepard, 1990. D. Wayne Lucas, 1999. Janet Elliott, 2009. Bob Baffert, 2009. Brian, has anyone come in since then? Okay, well, this group, Brian has done some really quick calculating. The group before you has over 88,000 wins, 36 Eclipse Awards, over 70 Triple Crown races, and 130 Breeders' Cup wins. So I think you will agree that, as Seneca the Younger would say, that they traveled that rough road. When things got a little bit better, they kept on traveling, and it was a long road, and each one has achieved and sustained the heights of greatness. Thank you.
Thank you, Hall of Famers, and thank you, Ed. I really love those quotes from those old Roman philosophers, and it's nice to know that you were actually personal friends with Seneca the Elder and Younger. It's always nice to have that good personal touch. I suppose appropriately, our first video presentation honors Pillar of the Turf, Mary Lou Whitney.
Mary Lou Whitney took up her pursuit of racing in 1992, continuing the legacy of her late husband, prominent owner and breeder C.V. Whitney. Mrs. Whitney spent a substantial amount of time and resources buying back mares associated with the Whitney family for breeding purposes. Among the purchases was Dear Birdie, who proved to be the foundation for Mary Lou Whitney stables. Dear Birdie was named Broodmare of the Year in 2004 and produced Birdstone and Champion Birdtown, who set a record for the fastest Kentucky Oaks in 2003, covering the mile and an eighth in 1:48.64. Mrs. Whitney also bred and campaigned Birdstone, winner of the 2004 Belmont, and a memorable renewal of the Travers. As a stallion, Birdstone sired Kentucky Derby winner Mind That Bird and champion Summerbird, who won both the Belmont and Travers. Birdstone became the first stallion since the 19th century to sire two classic winners in his first crop. In 2003, Mrs. Whitney was honored by the New York Turf Riders with the Ogden Phipps Award. Her philanthropy has benefited numerous organizations in racing, including the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, Secretariat Center, and National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame, among others. Her charitable efforts also extended to thoroughbred aftercare, improving conditions for backstretch workers and celebrating their role in the sport. Mrs. Whitney founded the National Museum of Dance and was influential in the creation of Saratoga Performing Arts Center. In 2010, she was honored with the Eclipse Award of Merit. The following year, Mrs. Whitney was elected to the Jockey Club. As she accepted the 2010 Eclipse Award, Mrs. Whitney was also honored by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's mother, Matilda, who presented her with a citation proclaiming her the Queen of Saratoga.
Let's welcome back to the stage John Henriksen.
I brought up one of the roses from Kentucky, the Mary Lou Whitney rose that I commissioned in her honor so that she would be here with us in spirit. And so I want to thank you for giving Mary Lou the highest honor in racing. She was extremely humbled when she heard the news. She told me she wanted to dedicate her induction to the horses and the people who love them, especially the unsung heroes, the backstretch workers. She said the sport of horse racing gave her the most incredible life, and she was extremely grateful. So I want to thank all of you for loving Mary Lou. She loved the sport and all of you with her entire heart. So let us not cry because it's over. Let us smile because it happened. God bless you, and God bless Mary Lou.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mary Lou. Now we're going to have a video about another great woman of racing, and she happens to be another Whitney as well.
Known as the First Lady of Racing, Helen Hay Whitney entered the sport with the steeplechaser Webb Carter, whom she acquired in 1910. The following year, Webb Carter won 6 races at hunt meetings to establish Mrs. Whitney on the steeplechase circuit. By the early 1920s, Mrs. Whitney's stable had grown considerably and expanded into flat racing. Campaigning her horses under the banner of Green Tree Stable, the name of both a family estate on Long Island and a Kentucky stud farm, Mrs. Whitney had her first champion in 1923, Untidy, winner of the Kentucky Oaks and Alabama Stakes. A couple of years later, the great steeplechaser Jolly Roger emerged for Green Tree. Bred by Harry Payne Whitney, he was sold to Green Tree and became one of America's greatest jumpers, winning the American Grand National in 1927 and 1928 en route to the Hall of Fame. Mrs. Whitney also won the Grand National in 1926 with Earn the Second and 1937 with Sailor Beware. Homebred 20 Grand debuted for Green Tree in 1930 and went on to a Hall of Fame career that included victories in the Kentucky Derby, Belmont, Travers, Saratoga Cup, and Jockey Club Gold Cup, among others.
20 grand win!
In 1939, Green Tree bred both Hall of Famer Devil Diver and the outstanding Shutout. A champion in 1943 and 1944, Devil Diver won 3 consecutive editions of the Manhattan Handicap, as well as the Hopeful, Sanford, Brooklyn, Carter, and Whitney. Shutout gave Green Tree its second Kentucky Derby win in 1942 and won the Belmont, Travers, and Pimlico Special. Mrs. Whitney bred a total of 79 stakes winners and was the first woman to be the Thoroughbred Club of America's honored guest in 1938.
Please welcome to the stage the great-grandsons of Helen Hay Whitney, Peter and Christopher de Bonaventura. Okay, you can say that.
Good morning, everyone. My brother Chris is here, sitting right over there. Though Helen Whitney passed away in 1944, a number of years before I came into this world, her Green Tree legacy really continued through her children, John Hay, Jock Whitney, and Joan Whitney Payson, of breeding and racing absolutely exceptional horses. I was here 2 years ago accepting this privilege, this award for jock, and I'm again fortunate to be here for my great-grandmother, as is Chris. These are just very brief words, but thank you, everyone. Thank you.
To the best of my knowledge, Jimmy Kilroe didn't own or breed horses. Maybe he did, but I didn't know that. But we're going to find out about one of the great figures of the 20th century in racing history, Jimmy Kilroe.
Frank Eugene Kilroe, known to racetrackers from California to New York by his nickname Jimmy, was one of the most respected and influential figures in American thoroughbred racing during the second half of the 20th century. Born in New York City in 1912, Kilroe was the second son of Dr. Edward P. Kilroe and his wife May. According to family legend, Kilroe's older brother had an imaginary friend named Jimmy. When I arrived, Kilroe once said, he began calling me by that nickname. Kilroe began his career in racing at Jamaica Racecourse, where his father was president. After graduating from Columbia University, where he entered at age 14, Kilroe served in the Army in World War II, rising to the rank of Sergeant Major and fighting in the Battle of the Bulge. Following his military service, Kilroe resumed his career in racing with jobs that included serving as the racing secretary at Arlington Park and Washington Park. Kilroe became racing secretary and handicapper at Santa Anita for the 1953-54 meeting. Also in 1954, he was named racing secretary and handicapper for the tracks that became the New York Racing Association, Aqueduct, Belmont, and Saratoga, where he remained through 1960. He split his time between New York and California for the remainder of the decade. By the 1970s, Kilroe oversaw racing at Santa Anita, Del Mar, and Hollywood Park. He thus forged a coherent and consistent racing program in Southern California, which was as successful as any in the country. Kilroe became senior vice president of the Los Angeles Turf Club and Oak Tree Racing in 1982, serving in the position until retiring in 1990. Kilroe received the Eclipse Award of Merit in 1979 and the Joe Palmer Award from the National Turf Riders Association in 1982. Kilroe became a member of the Jockey Club in 1981 and a steward for the organization in 1983. He also spent time as the director of the Grayson Jockey Club Research Foundation, served as a trustee of the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame, and an advisor for the American Horse Council.
Accepting will be Alan Balch, the executive director of the California Thoroughbred Trainers.
Thank you, Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a singular honor for me to be standing here in the reflected glory, not just of Mr. Kilroe, but also of Ted Bassett, Dick Duchossois, Will Farish, Mr. Kilroe's colleagues, and of the great many other honorees who have been recognized before and are inducted today. When I look at that honor roll, I see so many who knew him and his wife Martha very well, and so many champions he saw ride or run in New York or California, including Waya, who got her 131 pounds from him in the Santa Barbara. I met him around 1970, nearly 50 years ago now, when I was first interviewed for a position at Santa Anita. He was Mr. Kilroe to me then, and forever after, really, just as he always referred to John B. Campbell as Mr. Campbell when he was teaching us a lesson that he had previously been taught in his turn. Because Mr. Kilroe was fundamentally a teacher of the arts and sciences of thoroughbred racing. The great columnist of the Los Angeles Times, Jim Murray, wrote that he, quote, learned more from Jimmy Kilroe than all the other owners, trainers, and riders I have known in 40 years in racing. So we at Santa Anita and throughout racing were his pupils, and he our mentor. And not just about the fundamentals of filling all those races every day and funding those millions in purses for his tens of thousands of days. He taught us just as much, or more actually, by his example of exceptional judgment, dignified grace, quiet leadership, and the stature that accompanies them. Given all of that, he was also a man of startling and unfathomable humility. And then there was his droll sense of humor, never far from the surface, and a counterpoint to his wife Martha's style. As a member of the greatest generation, he served honorably and well, as did Ted and Dick. For his part, Mr. Kilroe survived the Battle of the Bulge, and so he always referred to our track maintenance people as the motor pool. And one time, almost as an aside, he said to me, I just wish all the GIs in Europe plastering Kilroe was here all over the place, at least would have spelled it right. Mr. Kilroe is now deservedly in the Hall of Fame. Thank you for spelling it right.
Calumet Farm, I suppose, one of the most iconic names in racing, and the name behind that name was Warren Wright Sr.
Warren Wright Sr. became the chairman of Chicago's Calumet Baking Powder Company in 1914, taking the reins from his father, the company founder. In 1929, Wright sold the business to a New York company, which soon became General Foods. Upon his father's death in 1931, Wright converted the family's Lexington farm, which bore the company name, from standardbreds to thoroughbreds, setting it on a path toward greatness. During Wright's lifetime, Calumet bred and raced 10 champions, Triple Crown winners Citation and Whirlaway, as well as Nellie Flagg, Markel, Twilight Tear, Armed, Bewitch, Coaltown, Two Lee, and Wistful. An 11th champion, Real Delight, became a yearling soon after Wright's death and was one of the many distinguished horses raced by Wright's widow, Lucille Parker Wright. During Wright's era, Calumet bred a total of 73 stakes winners and matched Colonel E.R. Bradley by winning the Kentucky Derby 4 times. Of the champions bred by Wright, 8 are in the Hall of Fame: Armed, Bewitch, Coaltown, Citation, Real Delight, Twilight Tear, Two Lee, and Whirlaway. With Wright at the helm, Calumet was the leading owner in money won 7 times during the 1940s, and the leader in races won 3 times during that decade. Calumet also topped the nation's leaderboard in breeder earnings 5 times in the 1940s and a 6th time in 1950. Key moments in the Calumet dynasty included Wright's purchase of future 5-time leading sire Bull Lee as a yearling, and the hiring of Ben Jones to train the stable. Jones' son, Jimmy, also became a successful trainer for the farm. Wright was elected to the Jockey Club in 1937 and was a member of the board of the original Grayson Foundation. He was the Thoroughbred Club of America's honored guest in 1940.
Accepting Robert Lundy, the great grandson of Warren Wright. He's not able to be here today, but he did make a point of wanting us to mention a couple things about Warren Wright, his great-grandfather. One of them was that Warren Wright's one of the real things he wanted to get done was to have Citation be the first horse ever to win $1 million. And Citation did do that. Unfortunately, Mr. Wright passed away just a couple months before Citation was able to do that. And he also wanted to give a great deal of gratitude to Ben and Jimmy Jones, as well as Citation, for making Calumet the great name that it is today. Those were from his great-grandson, Robert Lundy. Now let's take a look at a gentleman who is right here with us today, about William S. Farish.
A native of Houston, Texas, William S. Farish established the 2,300-acre Lanes End farm in Versailles, Kentucky, and developed it into one of the world's leading breeding operations. A two-time Eclipse Award winner for Outstanding Breeder, Farish served as the chairman of the board of Churchill Downs from 1992 through 2001 and won the Eclipse Award of Merit in 2009. Farish raced his first stakes winner, Kaskaskia, in 1967 and received his first major headlines as the owner of BBB, upset winner over future Hall of Famer Riva Ridge in the 1972 Preakness Stakes. Farish has campaigned more than 165 stakes winners, and Lanes End has bred more than 300 stakes winners under his direction, including Horse of the Year winners AP Indy, Charismatic, and Mineshaft, and champion Lemon Drop Kid. In 1999, Farish became the first breeder since Woodburn Studs A.J. Alexander in 1880 to breed or co-breed two horses, Charismatic and Lemon Drop Kid, that combined to win the Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and Belmont in the same year. Farish was also the co-breeder of Danzig, the leading sire in North America in 1991, 92, and 93. Danzig sired 188 stakes winners and 10 champions. Farish's leadership has been essential to the sport of racing. He has served as a steward and vice chairman of the Jockey Club, a director and chairman of the executive committee of the Breeders' Cup, and as a member of the board of directors of the Keeneland Association. In 2006, Farish became a trustee of the Keeneland Association. In 2001, he was appointed by President George W. Bush as the U.S. Ambassador to the United Kingdom, serving in the role for 3 years.
Please welcome to the dais Ambassador Farish. Now, we got to do a little something here. You just, Brooks Brothers really makes nice jackets, but this one is going to have to go. Yeah, we're gonna give you a jacket that is a lot harder to get from the Hall of Fame. It fits.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure this fits, but it certainly is something that I'm going to treasure. Over the last 50-odd years, Sarah and I shared the great pleasures that participation in this wonderful sport can bring. We chose to make breeding and racing thoroughbreds a lifestyle and a passion. Excuse me. It has been both the horses and the people that have enriched our lives. When I think of Warner Jones, for example, a very, very dear friend, I think of champion sire, Raja Baba, Broodmare of the Year, and My Charmer, both of which we owned together and had a tremendous relationship with. When I think of the Niarchos family, I think of King Mambo, Miesk, and our going 35-year partnership, Oak Tree, with the family. I've been involved in many partnerships, but none more enjoyable than the one with my very dear friend, Watts Humphrey, a partnership that continues today. Winning the Preakness with BBB was certainly an early situation, but doing it with my longtime friend and mentor, Del Carroll, made it that much better. Winning the Metropolitan and Whitney with honor code was incredible, but having Shug train him made it very, very special. Breeding, selling, and ultimately buying back one of the greatest sires of our generation, A.P. Indy. A.P. was an amazing ride, but sharing it with my great friend, Bill Kilroe, made it even more memorable. Receiving 2 Eclipse Awards for Outstanding Breeder was very gratifying, but having my farm manager of 40 years, Mike Klein, here with me made it very rewarding. And then there was Neil Howard, who is a wonderful trainer. He trained and is continuing to train over 50 stake winners. And I say, except that we won so many special races together. I am truly proud of Lane's End has accomplished over the years, of what Lane's End has accomplished over the past few years, and I am more confident than ever that our roster of proven and young stallions and a very experienced team led by our son Bill, that for the future, the farm looks extremely bright. I would like to thank the National Racing Hall of Fame. I cannot think of a higher honor than our sport than to be named a pillar of the turf. Thank you.
Don't worry, Will. We're going to get you your Brooks Brothers jacket back. Don't worry about that. And if the jacket that we gave you doesn't suit you, there's a tailor on Broadway. His name is Vincenzo. I would suggest bringing your banker with you when you visit Vincenzo. Let's introduce our first equine member to the Hall of Fame this year, My Juliet.
The Eclipse Award winner for Champion Sprinter in 1976, My Juliet, was bred in Kentucky by J.R. Bettersworth. She was owned for most of her career by George Weasel Jr. and trained primarily by Eugene Euster. My Juliet won 17 stakes, including 6 graded events in her 4 years of racing. A winner at 15 different tracks in 10 states, My Juliet returned from an injury during her championship season, which was prior to the introduction of separate championship designations for males and females in the sprint category. After suffering a hairline fracture of a cannon bone during her victory in the 1976 Vagrancy Handicap in May, My Juliet underwent surgery and was sidelined until the fall. Upon her return, she closed out the year with 4 consecutive wins, including a victory over Kentucky Derby and Belmont Stakes winner Bold Forbes in the Vosburg Handicap, one of several wins in her career against males. In addition to her speed, My Juliet was game in longer races too. Her victory in the 1977 Michigan Mile and 1/8 handicap against males was evidence of her durability. She also went gate to wire to win the 1 1/16 mile Black-Eyed Susan Stakes at Pimlico during her 3-year-old season. In winning the 1977 Neshaminy Handicap at Keystone, My Juliet broke the 6.5 furlong track record with a time of 1:14. In the Neshaminy, she beat Gallant Bob, another Eclipse Award-winning sprinter. Ridden by Tony Black for the majority of her final 2 seasons, My Juliet retired with 24 wins from 36 starts. As a broodmare, she notably produced 2 daughters by Hall of Fame inductee Alydar. Tis Juliet won the Chouvy Handicap, while Stella Madrid won the Frisette, Spinaway, Matron, and Acorn Stakes. My Juliet died in 2001 at the age of 29.
My Juliet was written by this guy, Tony Black. He won over 5,200 races, prompting many people to say, is he ever going to retire? Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Black.
It's an honor to be here. One more win, 52-12, that'll be it. Yeah, I want to thank the Hall of Fame committee and for giving her the consideration and inducting her into the Hall of Fame, and one person in particular, Steve Haskin. He listened to me. He listened to me talk about her for so many years, and then he did the research. He says, hey, Tone, for once in your life, you're right. She deserves consideration. So thank you, Steve. I also want to thank the Harris family, who are the grandchildren and the wives of the Harris family of the original breeder, Mr. Bittersworth. And the Harris family is here. And one of the unsung heroes is here also, Jim Maloney. Jim Maloney was a groom of My Juliet. And you know, these guys never get much recognition, but he was very instrumental. Jim, wave your rub rag, Jimmy. Wave that rub rag. I also want to say, you know, My Juliet came in an era where the women's rights movement and the women's lib movement was just starting to get strong in the mid-'70s. Well, as you know, with the introduction, she was never intimidated by gender. She beat the boys and she beat the girls. She was just a wonderful horse to ride. You know, at one time there was a show on TV, Angel Cordero. They left her up in the Vosburg. Can you believe that, Angel? Where are you, Angel? They left her up in the Vosburg. You know, there was a show on TV at that particular time, and it was called The $6 Million Man, the Bionic Man. You know, and we nicknamed her the Bionic Filly because after the operation and putting 2 screws in her cannon bone, that's when she reached the pinnacle of her career, the highlight of her career. That's when I got the opportunity as a test pilot to ride her. And she was just a wonderful horse to ride. Barbara Livingston put a book out one time that I have a copy of. It was called Visiting Old Friends. And it was a picture of her on Old Friends Farm in Kentucky, a picture of the grand old matriarch that she was, or that she is in my mind and always will be. Her mane was down to her knees and her foretop was hanging over her face. And I said, I want to go visit her. She's in the twilight, the end stages of her life. And I just want to put my hands in her neck one last time. I want to slide my hands down her neck, put them in her mane, down to her withers. You know, jockeys communicate with horses with their hands on their neck and say, Julie, you did so much for me. I love you. I never did get the opportunity to do that. And it taught me one lesson, and I'll tell you what it is. Don't just understand the real value of someone when they're gone. Tell them when they're here. My son and my wife are in the audience. Pete, I love you, Pete. Kylie, I love you, Kylie, and so thank you so much for all you've done for me. And thank you, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to see you one last time, Julie. But wherever you are, or wherever animals and horses go, and all the things you do for us, jockeys, trainers, owners, racetrackers, thank you so much, Julie. I love you. You've been a highlight of my career.
Well, you were a hell of a test rider, I got to tell you that. And a hell of a speaker, too, wasn't he? I misspent my youth at Arlington Park when I was supposed to be going to summer school. I was going out to the track, and one of the great heroes of racing in Illinois is our next inductee, Richard L. Duchossois.
A Chicago native, Richard Duchossois attended Washington and Lee University for 2 years before serving in World War II. He participated in 5 European campaigns, including Normandy under General George Patton, where he was a commander with the 610th Tank Destroyer Battalion. Duchossois attained the rank of major before being discharged and was awarded a Purple Heart and 2 Bronze Stars. In 1983, Duchossois, known in the racing industry affectionately as Mr. D, purchased Arlington Park and helped the track garner international acclaim through the continued development of its signature event, the Arlington Million. The Million brought tremendous popularity to Arlington with a purse double that of the Kentucky Derby in its early years, attracting horses such as 2-time winner John Henry. Under the direction of Duchossois, Arlington became the first track to win the Special Eclipse Award in 1985, when it produced the Miracle Million, successfully running the marquee race less than a month after a major fire devastated the track. Duchossois was presented a Special Eclipse Award in 1989 and the Eclipse Award of Merit in 2003. Arlington played host to the Breeders' Cup in 2002, and the Arlington International Festival of Racing developed into one of the top draws of elite foreign horses to America each year. In 2000, Arlington merged with Churchill Downs Incorporated, with Duchossois maintaining a prominent role on the board of directors. A member of the Jockey Club, Duchossois has served many organizations in the sport, including the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame and the Thoroughbred Racing Association. He was awarded the Jockey Club's Gold Medal in 1986, a Special Sovereign Award from the Jockey Club of Canada in 1988, and the Lord Derby Award in Great Britain also in 1988.
I have trouble with those stairs, too. Don't worry about it. Oh, we got to give you some glad rags here, if you will. We got to take your jacket off first.
Oh, I do?
Yep. Welcome to the club.
Want to thank y'all. This is a better jacket than I just took off. I don't have the proper words to thank you for the honor that you've extended to me. is probably one of the highest honors I've ever received, and I very much appreciate it. I didn't earn it. The people out here and the rest of the industry really earned it because they are the ones that taught me what the racing was all about. Let me share a story with you. My first trainer was a fellow named Bobby Kramer. I hadn't had horses but maybe 3 or 4 weeks. I was down in Bobby's office and said, Bobby, what do I have to learn and what should I be doing as an owner? He turned around, he grabbed the stapler, he grabbed the conditions book, stamped the two together and said, here, now you know all you're ever going to learn. And I certainly understood what he was saying, and I've learned to keep my mouth shut and listen. But Bobby was a great guy, and we all miss him. However, he was only one of the many, many people in the industry that helped me, and I would much appreciate it. And all you people here who have contributed so much to racing, I thank you for what you have done. This is one of the greatest industries that I've had the privilege of being a part of. This is probably the only industry that I'm aware of that has a common language between all countries. Usually we fight back and forth, but today with the racing and breeding industry, we race all over the world, and we all have one common language, horse racing. And this is one of the greatest sports that we will ever have. There is no other industry in the world like the ones we participate in, and you are the people that make it all possible. When we take our horses to the track, and when we have the opportunity to run, there's something that just makes your blood boil inside. And sometimes you win, sometimes you don't win. But you certainly learn how to lose and how to lose fast. If I had to pick any other industry, and I've been fortunate enough to be in several, I'd pick horse racing as one of the top racing industries in the world. We get to know people from Europe. We get to know people from all around the world, and all have one common language. That's horse racing. And with that, if we're going to get all the politicians in the world to look at the same way that you people out here look at the world, we'd be a better country. I say many thanks for this honor you have bestowed upon me. It's deeply appreciated. And I say it's one of the greatest honors I've ever received. Thank you very much.
And I want to personally thank you, me and the entire industry, and particularly horse players in Chicago, for building the beautiful Arlington Park. Mr. Duchossois was talking about international racing, and the Arlington Million is one of the great international races. And when teleprompter was there, he was owned by Lord Derby, won the race. And so, of course, you know, Lord or not, you got to get fingerprinted and licensed. So he goes to the licensing office, and the licensing guy there at Arlington Park says, okay, first name. And he goes, well, I don't go by a first name. He says, well, what's your name? He goes, I'm Lord Derby. All right, your first name's Lord. Our next honoree is James R. Keene. Keene Miller, his great-grandson, will accept. James R. Keene.
As a young man, England native James R. Keene made shrewd investments in California and Nevada mining companies and was eventually appointed president of the San Francisco Stock Exchange. Keene became interested in horse racing when he moved to New York in 1876. His first major racing success was with Spindthrift, winner of the 1879 Belmont Stakes. In 1881, Keene sent Foxhall, named for his son, to become the first American horse to win the Grand Prix de Paris, at the time the most important race in France. Foxhall went on to win the prestigious Ascot Gold Cup in England the following year. In 1884, huge losses in the grain market cost Keene his entire fortune, but he rebounded financially, and his success with stocks prompted J.P. Morgan and William Rockefeller to hire Keene to manage their assets. Having emerged once again as a powerful force in the financial community, Keene went back to investing in racing. In the 1890s, his Castleton farm in Kentucky became one of the most important breeding operations in American history. Keene purchased 40 mares from England for breeding and brought in James Roe Sr. to train his racehorses. He also raced once again in England, winning the 1901 Epsom Oaks with Cap'n-Bells II. Keene bred 113 stakes winners, 13 of those champions: Hall of Famers Masquette, Peter Pan, Sisonby, Kingston, Colin, and Commando, as well as Runnymede, Court Dress, Ballot, Delhi, Sweep, Novelty, and Dominant. He also owned Hall of Famer Domino.
Let's welcome to the dais his great-grandson, Keene Miller. And somebody else.
Thank you very much. Today is a happy day for our family. I am, in fact, his great-great-grandson, as is my cousin Keene Taylor, who is here with me. And we want to, as representatives of our family, thank everybody involved for this great honor for James R. Keene. Mr. Keene was a remarkable man. I think for us, racing is more than just a sport or a business. It's a great institution, and the great institutions have an appreciation for the history and traditions that are its foundation. And this recognition of Mr. Keene, now 106 years after his passing and when he was a force in racing, is a tremendous example of that. And from all of us, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate our gratitude to both the museum and the hall, especially on behalf of my late father and Keene namesake. We are so thankful that the Pillar of the Turf category was added for recognition of these great past people, as well as present and future folks who don't ride, train, or run. Thank you. We don't know what James R. and his fellow horsemen would think. I don't know if they could have imagined more than 125 years ago, when they founded the Jockey Club, what this great institution would become. But I do know that he would be very proud to join his many champions in the hall. I believe something on the order of half the horses running now have his bloodlines in their past. So we're very grateful that the white silks and blue polka dots are more firmly ensconced in the hall. Thanks again.
I am old enough, and I suppose most of the people in the room are old enough to remember a terrific horse. For those of you who are not of a certain age, you're about to get a look at a terrific horse, a terrific mare, Waya.
Before attaining great success in America, Waya was a multiple group stakes winner in France, where she began her career as a 3-year-old for her breeder, Daniel Wildenstein, and Hall of Fame trainer Angel Penna. Brought to America as a 4-year-old in 1978, Waya equaled a world record for 9 furlongs on turf when she won the Diana Handicap at Saratoga in 1:45 2/5. She placed herself in historic company with the clocking, sharing the mark with Secretariat, Tentam, and Crystal Water. The Diana was the first of 4 straight impressive wins for Waya. The next 3 were at Belmont Park, with the Flower Bowl at 1.25 miles against her own sex, before defeating males in both the Man of War and Turf Classic. After her exceptional 4-year-old campaign, Waya was purchased by Peter Brandt and George Strawbridge Jr. and trained by David Whiteley. Waya turned in another 4-race win streak in 1979 that began in California with the Santa Ana Handicap and followed with the Santa Barbara under 131 pounds at 1.25 miles. Returning to New York, Waya won the Top Flight Handicap at Aqueduct under 128 pounds, 8 more than the runner-up. She then won the Saratoga Springs Cup Handicap at 10 furlongs on a sloppy Belmont Park main track, while conceding 6 pounds to the runner-up. 4 months later, Waya earned her final career victory in the Beldame Handicap at 1.25 miles to seal her Eclipse Award as Champion Older Mare. Overall, Waya won 11 stakes races and won or placed in 24 of her 29 starts. As a broodmare, she was represented by 11 starters, 8 of whom were winners. Waya died at the age of 27 at Bettina Jenny's Dairy Meeting Farm.
The co-owners of Waya, Peter Brandt and George Strawbridge.
Thanks to the Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame for bestowing this great honor to Waya. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank her trainer, David Whiteley, a great trainer who was so diligent in campaigning Waya. Also, my friend and great rider, Angel Cordero Jr., who always stayed loyal and loved this mare and rode her all the time. And of course, Daniel Wildenstein, who had the courage to bring her over here and train her here with Angel Penna Jr. And we were fortunate enough to be offered this mare through Eugenio Colombo. And this mare just provided us with the greatest excitement and most wonderful times. It's in your blood. I could never forget the great victories that this mare had, and I really appreciate the Hall of Fame honoring her and acknowledging her accomplishments. Thank you very much.
I agree with everything Peter has just said, and thank the committee and everybody that voted for her. Really appreciate it. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience to be associated with such a great animal. Thank you.
Our next pillar of the turf is Christopher Chenery.
A native of Richmond, Virginia, and a graduate of Washington and Lee University, Christopher Chenery established the famed Meadow Stud and was one of the founders of what became the New York Racing Association. Chenery began his involvement with racing and breeding with the purchase of a few horses in 1936. 3 years later, he bought his foundation mare, Hill Dean, for $750. Hill Dean produced 2 of Chenery's most important horses, Hill Prince the 1950 Horse of the Year and Hall of Fame member, and First Landing, champion juvenile in 1958. First Landing later sired Hall of Famer Reva Ridge, winner of the Kentucky Derby and Belmont Stakes. Overall, Chenery is credited with breeding 43 stakes winners. He also owned Hall of Famer Cicada, once the world's leading money winner among mares. In the mid-1950s, Chenery was one of 3 men appointed by the Jockey Club to restructure New York racing. Along with John W. Haynes and Harry Guggenheim, Chenery organized the nonprofit Greater New York Association with the idea of funneling proceeds to benefit the state. In 1965, Chenery entered a foal-sharing agreement with the Phipps family, which owned top sire Bold Ruler. 3 years later, Chenery became ill and his daughter Penny took charge of Meadow Stud. Penny chose Something Royal as one of the mares for breeding to Bold Ruler. In the fall of 1969, Penny Chenery lost the coin toss with the Phipps family, who chose a different Meadow stable mare's foal. The Meadow kept Something Royal's yet-to-be-born foal, Secretariat, and the rest is history. Secretariat developed into one of the greatest racehorses of all time, winning the 1973 Triple Crown en route to the Hall of Fame and immortal status. Chenery died in early 1973, but his legacy in the sport has carried on.
That was one hell of a coin toss, I gotta tell you. Let's welcome to the dais Kate Chenery, Tweety, the granddaughter of Christopher Chenery.
Thank you so much. It is a huge honor to be here and not a little humbling to be speaking in front of this illustrious crowd, which represents some of the best and the brightest of this wonderful sport. Granddad loved horses. He probably loved them as much as anyone in this room, and you all, of course, are all horse lovers. He was, as a toddler, transfixed by seeing horses being drawing a hack or a wagon on the streets of Richmond, so much so that he would get lost, and his family would have to come back and find him. As a young man, he walked 7 miles from Ashland, Virginia to Doswell, Virginia to exercise the few remaining horses that belonged to the Doswell stud around the turn of the century. He was so enamored of horses. He grew up poor, but as the video said, found a way out of his poverty through education. He went to Washington and Lee along Mr. Duchossois' alma mater, but knew that opportunity lay in New York. So he went to New York around 1920 and discovered another love, which was finance. Within 8 years, he'd become a millionaire in the utilities business. But as soon as he made enough money, he went back to his first love, which was horses, founded Boulder Brook Riding Club in New Rochelle, New York, where he learned to play polo and he hunted to hounds. In 1936, he had a heart attack, which meant he had to slow down. And by slowing down, he decided to stop playing polo. But he went back to Virginia to buy back the meadow, which had been the family farm lost to the bank 25 years earlier. His first thought was to breed for steeplechase racing, but then he chose flat racing. And within, as the film showed you, not about 10 years, he had a Horse of the Year, Hill Prince, which was a big, huge achievement for him, and he was so proud. When he ended up being accepted into the Jockey Club, and I forget what year that was, it was one of his proudest achievements. He was a huge devotee of the sport. And was it was demonstrated in part by his commitment to NYRA and to the fact that the New York racing industry really needed reviving and revitalizing. At his After he died, we got a condolence note from John Haynes, who said that without Granddad taking on a personal loan to fund the Naira reconstruction, it wouldn't have happened. John Haynes was one of his cohorts. You know, he was very lucky, but he was a hard worker. He always said that he was not the smartest man in the room, but the most hardworking. And he always only wanted the best for his horses. A couple of examples of that was when he set up the meadow, he piped spring water to all the paddocks instead of river water, because he wanted them to have that rich, mineral-rich, healthier water. A story that I love is when when Granddad brought all his friends and family to Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby in 1950, Hill Prince's Derby, Mom was there, and they all expected to win. He was favored, but he didn't win. He came in second, lost to Middle Ground. And Mom, who was pregnant with her first child, was crushed. She came to win, and she burst into tears. And Granddad said to her, he turned on her, and he was very, very forthright. He said, "Don't you ever do that. Don't embarrass the horse." And by that he meant, you know, of course, horses are athletes, and they are to be respected, and they give their best to us every time. He would have been so proud, absolutely thrilled to receive this honor. You and your antecedents are his peers, and he wanted nothing more than, I think, to be among your number and to be accepted and to excel at this sport. If alive, I'm sure that he would be, first of all, thrilled that Colonial Downs is coming back, reopening in Virginia, is seeing a revitalization of the sport in Virginia. He also would have been devoted to equine safety, better running surfaces, regulation of performance-enhancing drugs, because again, he was really all about the horse. Today we're full of the stories of illustrious people who have loved this sport and excelled in it, and he would just have been so proud to be among your number. And we are very proud today to be continuing his legacy at the Meadow in Virginia with a museum, and we're renovating the barns that he built that are 80 years old and on the Register of Historic Places. And we've got a brand new campaign to really develop it as an international museum. So we welcome your coming to visit and any kind of participation you'd like to share with us in this exciting endeavor. And once again, on behalf of our family, we are thrilled and honored for this great recognition.
So it's kind of like Ladies' Day here at the Hall of Fame inductions. We've highlighted a lot of some of the great women of the industry, and in that regard, I want to invite you to go over to the museum itself, where we have a special exhibition this year called Women in Racing, and most of the ladies that you've heard us mention today are there as well. And you're also invited. They have tours at the museum every racing day during the racing season. The tours start at 11 o'clock. I think the fee is $25, but the tour is absolutely fantastic. It's informative. It is witty. It is full of charm. And I'd be very happy to take you through the museum every racing day at 11 o'clock. One of those ladies is Gladys Mills Phipps.
A native of Newport, Rhode Island, Gladys Mills Phipps became involved in thoroughbred racing when she established Wheatley Stable in 1926 with her brother Ogden L. Mills. In 1927, Mrs. Phipps and her brother purchased 8 of Harry Payne Whitney's homebreds including Jockey Club Gold Cup winner Diavolo, Wood Memorial winner Distraction, and Alabama winner Nixie. Before long, Wheatley Stable hired Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons as head trainer. Through the 1930s and 1940s, Wheatley bred and raced such standouts as Coaching Club American Oaks winner Edelweiss and Metropolitan and Suburban Handicap winner Snark, while the stable also won 2 Jockey Club Gold Cups with the savvy purchase Dark Secret. Breeding and raising its horses at Claiborne Farm in Kentucky, Wheatley Stable bred 11 champions under the direction of Mrs. Phipps: Seabiscuit, High Voltage, Misty Morn, Bold Ruler, Castle Forbes, Bold Lad, Queen Empress, Successor, Bold Bidder, Top Bid, and Autobiography. Bold Ruler became the Phipps family's first classic winner when he won the 1957 Preakness. That year, he traded victories in major races within one of the greatest crops of 3-year-olds in history. Bold Ruler won the final showdown of that year's greats, defeating fellow Hall of Famers Gallup Man and Round Table in the Trenton Handicap. Bold Ruler was the champion 3-year-old and shared Horse of the Year honors. He went on to lead the sire list for 7 consecutive years from 1963 through 1969, and again in 1973. No other sire in the 20th century topped the list more than 5 times. Bold Ruler sired 11 champions, including Hall of Famers Secretariat and Gamely. Overall, Wheatley Stable bred 102 stakes winners with Mrs. Phipps at the helm and was America's leading owner in earnings in 1964.
Stuart Janney, where are you, Stuart? There you are. Come on up here. This is the grandson of Gladys Mills Phipps, one of the grandsons.
If you knew Gladys Mills Phipps, you'd understand why and how she accomplished all that. And many of you here in this room do remember her. I was lucky to be one of her grandchildren, and she was to all of us affectionately called Gran-Gran. Today's world suggests that women can and should do all that men have traditionally done. Gran-Gran acquainted me with that concept at least 60 years ago. The records state that she started her stable in partnership with her brother Ogden Mills, and then later her partner was her husband, Henry Phipps. I think both my great uncle and grandfather would agree that they were mostly silent partners. Gran-Gran was running the show. She loved our great sport. Clearly, it provided an outlet for her very competitive nature and business skills. Her grandchildren all knew that the quickest way to win her interest and favor was to excel at a sport. Fortunately for me, academics not so much. We also knew that to interrupt her high-stakes bridge games on days when she wasn't racing was a no-no. Gran-Gran liked to bet $20 to win on her horse, and she took it to the window herself. One of the most vivid memories was sitting in her house on Long Island before lunch and before a big race that afternoon. The butler came in to say that one of her grandchildren was calling from college. She took the call, expecting, I think, to hear good wishes for the race. My not-to-be-named cousin, and whose name is not Denny Phipps, was calling to say he'd studied the racing form, and could she put $20 on one of the other horses in the race? I never thought I would witness such an outrage. With a not very amused look on her face, Gran-Gran dug into her purse and handed me a $20 bill. I guess she knew that Naira was still taking bets back then from 14-year-olds who looked 12. I'll tell you what I know. This grandchild was in a lot better spot placing the bet than the one who'd called it in. But the biggest reason for my grandmother's passion for racing was her love for her horses and the people that cared for them. My lasting image of her is of a petite, white-haired lady behind the wheel of her Bentley, head poking up between the spokes of the wheel. Remember, the front seats of Bentleys in those days were made for tall chauffeurs. Driving to the track in New York or Florida at dawn, a big German Shepherd and a Spaniel in the back. That's when she was happiest. She would not want to be inducted into the Hall of Fame today without thanking the trainers who took her horses to such success, particularly Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons, who was a great man. She would also want you to know how grateful she was for the advice of Bull Hancock and the wonderful care her horses received at Claiborne. It's an honor for me to present Gladys Mills Phipps to the Hall of Fame, and I thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. And Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons, of course, played such a great role with that family. Arguably the greatest trainer of the 20th century. Arguably. Trained 2 Triple Crown winners. But I'm going to do you guys a favor. I'm going to give you a piece of trivia that's going to make you a fortune at the end of a bar. Who was Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons' godson? Vince Lombardi. There you go. And if you don't know who Vince Lombardi is, and I can see that by some of the dumbfounded faces here, he coached football. Keeping it in the family, let's honor Ogden Phipps.
A New York City native and Harvard University graduate, Ogden Phipps served in the Navy in World War II before becoming a partner in the prominent brokerage firm Smith, Barney & Company. Phipps then used his financial expertise to head up Bessemer Securities Corporation. In 1946, Phipps got his start in racing when he bought a group of horses from the estate of Colonel E.R. Bradley's Idlehour Farm Dispersal. Those purchases served as the initial core of a successful operation that built on his family's already extensive legacy in racing. Like his family's Wheatley stable, which was brought to prominence by his mother, Phipps bred and developed his horses at Claiborne Farm in Kentucky through much of his career. Phipps bred 12 champions, Hall of Fame members Buck Passer, Easy Goer, Heavenly Prize, and Personal Ensign, as well as Ancestor, Impressive, Mako, Queen of the Stage, Vitriolic, Number to Count, Relaxing, and Storm Flag Flying. Phipps was the leading breeder in Money Won in 1988 and 1989. He won consecutive Eclipse Awards as Outstanding Owner in 1988 and 1989, and also garnered an Eclipse for Outstanding Breeder in 1988. Overall, Phipps bred 108 stakes winners either individually or in partnership. In England, Phipps won the St. Leger Stakes and the 1,000 Guineas. His horses also won 4 Breeders' Cup races. First with the undefeated Personal Ensign in 1988, then Dancing Spree in 1989, and Inside Information and My Flag in 1995. Phipps was also a stalwart as an industry leader, a founding member of the New York Racing Association and a member of its board of trustees. Phipps additionally served as the chairman of the Jockey Club for 20 years. Phipps was posthumously voted the Eclipse Award of Merit after his passing in 2002. The Ogden Phipps Handicap at Belmont Park is named in his honor.
They're off in the Ogden Phipps.
Needing no introduction is Shug McGahee.
Well, I want to thank Tom for his great job today. And the first things I want to say is that Mr. Phipps, through his shyness and sometimes aloofness, was probably the kindest and most generous man that I've ever known. Now that I've got that off the thing, I'll start. I'd like to start off by congratulating all the individuals and to their family members who are being inducted into the Hall of Fame today. We thank you for all you've done, not only for horse racing, but for the thoroughbred industry as a whole. Each of you is certainly deserving of this great honor and will be a welcome addition to this institution. I would personally like to thank my friend Craig Perret as a contemporary jockey inductee. He won many big races for us, including the Travers and the Breeders' Cup. He has not only been a great rider, but a good friend as well. Congratulations, Craig. It's a well-deserved honor. Most of all, I want everyone here today to know how honored I feel to be accepting a plaque on behalf of Mr. Phipps and the entire Phipps family. Mr. Phipps obviously played a huge role in my life and career, and I will always be grateful to him for that. He was always a pleasure to be around. He taught me a lot about the horse business and even more about life itself. And that wasn't through conversation. That was through me observing him and the way that he lived. He never questioned my decisions, and he never complained when a horse didn't run well, at least not to me. He got it. He was a type of owner that trainers dream about having. I could have never asked for a better situation, and the trust and the loyalty that he had in me has been passed down through the years to Denny, and now to Andy, Ogden, Daisy, and to their sisters. I have a couple of short anecdotes I thought you might enjoy. In 1986, Polish Navy won the Champagne. The next morning, Mr. Phipps was at the barn, as he usually was, and he told me, he said, "Should come up to the house when you get done. I want to call Seth Hancock and see if we can't try to do something with the syndication of Polish Navy." Mr. Phipps and Seth quickly came to an agreement. Deal done. Mr. Phipps then asked someone in the house to get a bottle of bourbon. Up from the basement, a bottle of bourbon came. It had a cork in it, had moss all around it. He poured us both a drink. He drank his straight down. I took a sip and had to back away. He said, "What's the matter? You don't like it?" I said, "No, Mr. Phipps is fine, but I gotta let this ice melt a little bit before I can drink any more of this." It was really strong. A few years later, we had a horse in a stake at Belmont and a stake at the Meadowlands that night. So he and Mr. Phipps were both at the barn that morning, Saturday morning, and he suggested he got somebody to drive us to the stake at Belmont, and from there, we'd go into the 21 Club and have dinner. Well, I'd never been to the 21 Club, and I was quickly thinking about what a good idea this was going to be. When I looked over, Mr. Phipps was scratching his head, as he usually did, and he looked at Denny and he said, "I would hope my chef at home is better than the chef at the 21 Club." Needless to say, we ate at home and then went to the Meadowlands. A few years later, we had a horse in a big stake, filling in a big stake at Belmont. And she'd been running, she'd been hanging a little bit, so our idea then was we're going to take her back and see if we can't make her finish a little better. Well, as happens, the gates open, speed doesn't show. We found ourselves either forwardly placed or on the lead, finished second. Well, I could look at Mr. Phipps, and without him saying anything, I could tell he wasn't too happy with the ride, so we went home afterwards, Alice and I did, and I looked down, the phone rang, and I looked at it, and it had Mr. Phipps's number on it. I took the phone, handed it to Allison, and said, "You take this one." In 1998, Stuart Janney's Coronado's Quest one of the travelers. After the race and the press conference, Stuart and I walked back to the trustees' room, and the first person that met us at the door, met Stuart, was Mr. Phipps. And almost with tears in his eyes, he congratulated his nephew that day for winning the race. And that's something I've never forgot. In closing, I'd just like to say that Mr. Phipps was without question one of those individuals who made extraordinary contributions to the thoroughbred racing. On behalf of his family, I would like to thank the museum and the committee for honoring him as a pillar of the turf. He certainly was one. Thank you.
Thank you, Shug, who was certainly one of the great trainers of the 20th century. But you probably didn't know that he's actually LeBron James's godfather. Yeah. Certainly a pillar of the turf, and particularly the announcer said, particularly a pillar of the New York turf. Let's look at some video about John Hettinger.
A graduate of Yale University, John Hettinger enjoyed a successful career in Mexico and Spain in chemical sales and real estate, before returning to the United States in 1973 to take over Aikendale Farm in Pawling, New York, which his father had owned. Hettinger expanded the property to 800 acres and campaigned such stakes-winning horses as Jazzing Around, Lady Decord, and Prospector's Flag.
Nursed along through the...
Aikendale also stood such stallions as Decord, Personal Flag, Stacked Pack, and Sir Wimborne. Hettinger's favorite horse was Wharfie, who he said gave him his biggest thrill as an owner when she won the Long Island Handicap in 1989.
Wharfie leads to the wire.
Hettinger stepped in at a crucial period in the history of Fasig-Tipton, North America's oldest thoroughbred auction company. In December 1991, Hettinger and his family funded a significant portion of the firm's recapitalization plan. Most of the money was used to pay off Fasig-Tipton's debt, and in exchange, the Hettinger family was given the majority of the voting control of Fasig-Tipton. A member of the Jockey Club and chairman of the Grayson Jockey Club Research Foundation, Hettinger was presented the Eclipse Award of Merit in 2000. An outspoken opponent of horse slaughter, he founded Blue Horse Charities to fight the mistreatment of horses and to set up adoption for many after their racing careers were over. Hettinger also personally financed the book After the Finish Line, which detailed the atrocities of horse slaughter. He sent copies to every member of Congress. Hettinger was also honored with the Safe Home Equine Protection Award by Equine Advocates in 2004, and given a President's Award by the New York Turf Writers Association.
And to accept is John's son, Bill.
On behalf of the Hettinger family, I'd like to thank the National Museum of Racing for inducting my dad into the Hall of Fame. He would not have believed it. He had a lot of respect. He talked about a Hall of Fame trainer, a Hall of Fame jockey, and for him to be in this illustrious group, he would have been humbled beyond words. He started Aikendale Farm in the early 70s and spent 35 years doing what he loved. He loved his interaction with racing, with breeding, with Fasig-Tipton, and made many friends over the years. But as he said on the slide there, he said his best friends had 4 legs. And in his later years, all he really devoted himself to was not breeding winners or winning races, but worrying about the ones that came in also ran. And that's why Aikendale Farm today is an Aikendale Rehabilitation Farm. I want to thank, on behalf of our family, the museum, because although he can't be here to enjoy it, it means the world to us that a great man that he was appreciated by the industry he loved so much. Thank you very much.
And in keeping with a recurring theme today, let's take a look at another fabulous female, Royal Delta.
A Dark Bay daughter of 2003 Belmont Stakes winner Empire Maker, Royal Delta was loaded with pedigree. Her dam, Delta Princess, was a multiple graded stakes winner by another Belmont winner, Hall of Famer A.P. Endy. Bred in Kentucky by Pallades Investments, Royal Delta was brought to the races by Hall of Famer Bill Mott. She broke her maiden at first asking with a sharp victory the day before Halloween at Belmont Park in 2010. The following year, Royal Delta became a champion. She won her first graded stakes in the Black-Eyed Susan at Pimlico and went on to take the Grade 1 Alabama at Saratoga before winning the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic at Churchill Downs by 2.5 lengths to secure the Eclipse Award for Champion 3-year-old filly. Royal Delta was then sold to Benjamin Leon's Bessie Lou Stables for $8.5 million at Keeneland. Leon brought her back to the track as a 4-year-old, and Royal Delta rewarded her new owner with another championship campaign that featured graded victories in the Fleur-de-Lis Handicap, Delaware Handicap, and Belle Dame before capping her sensational season with a second consecutive win in the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic, this time at Santa Anita.
Royal Delta, my Miss Aurelia, here is a champion again! Royal Delta has won the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic!
Royal Delta was again an Eclipse winner, this time for Champion Older Mare. She raced one more season and continued to succeed at a high level. As a 5-year-old in 2013, Royal Delta repeated in the Delaware Handicap and won the Personal Ensign at Saratoga. Her bid for a third consecutive Breeders' Cup win fell short, but she repeated as the Eclipse winner for Champion Older Mare and was retired with a dozen career wins from 22 starts, including 10 graded victories.
So please welcome to the dais owner Benjamin Leon and some guy who looks like a lot like Bill Mott. I don't know.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor for me to have had this opportunity of owning such an amazing and exceptional mare. I am here today, and I have asked my friend Bill Mott to join me for the acceptance of this great honor. And I will accept it on behalf of the two men that really deserve all the credit. Prince, Sud, Bin, Khalib, her breeder, and my friend and her trainer, Bill Mott. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you. I didn't expect to be up here, but last-minute decision. But I got to say, I was very lucky to train this mare. I trained her family. It's such a wonderful situation to be in when you can train. I was able to train her mother, and for a while I trained her grandmother. And when you get, lucky enough to get into these families, they just keep giving and giving. And Royal Delta is the result of, one of those families. And I was just so lucky after we won the Breeders' Cup with her when she was a 3-year-old. I was crying like a baby leading her to the van when she went to the, she was on her way to the sale 2 days later. And I was so lucky to meet Mr. Leone after the sale, and he gave me a call a couple days later and asked if I would take her back. That was not a very tough decision. And she rewarded us with 2 more championship seasons, and better than that, I had a wonderful relationship with Mr. Leone and his family, and I've got to say, not only the great horses in this business, but the wonderful people that we meet. Thank you.
Thank you, Misters Leone and Mott. Thank you very much. One of the people that is responsible for my own personal journey on the road to perdition was a 16-year-old apprentice jockey at Arlington Park who just kept on winning race after race, and I kept on betting on him race after race. Last time I cashed a bet, but it was a long time ago, and that young apprentice jockey's name was Craig Perret.
Craig Perret began his riding career at the age of 16 as North America's leading apprentice in 1967. By the time he retired 38 years later, Perret had won 4,415 races, an Eclipse Award, the Kentucky Derby, Belmont Stakes, 4 Breeders' Cup races, and numerous other major races and accolades. Born in New Orleans, Perret rose to stardom in the 1970s, winning such prestigious races as the Travers, Spinster, and Florida Derby, among others. He won his first Triple Crown race in 1987, piloting Bet Twice to victory in the Belmont, a devastating 14-length romp that denied Ali Sheba the Triple Crown.
Win this one, it's Bet Twice.
In 1990, Perret rode unbridled to win the Kentucky Derby. He won the Eclipse Award for Outstanding Jockey that year, tying a record with 57 stakes wins, of which 31 were graded events. Perret won Grade 1s with 6 different horses in 1990, unbridled in the Kentucky Derby, safely kept in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, Rhythm in the Travers Stakes, Sharon in the Coaching Club American Oaks, Fantastic Find in the Hempstead Handicap, and Housebuster in the Jerome Handicap. His purse earnings that year came in at a career-best $11.7 million. Perret also found success in Canada in the 1990s, winning consecutive editions of the Queen's Plate at Woodbine in 1992 with Allideed and in 1993 with Peatski, respectively. In 1994, Perret won his 3rd Canadian Triple Crown event when he partnered with Bruce's Mill in the Prince of Wales Stakes at Fort Erie. Perret was still going strong when he won the Grade 2 Churchill Downs Distaff Handicap with Hallery Lee in November 2004. It marked the 208th and final graded win of his career. When he retired in 2005, Perret had won a total of 505 stakes races with career earnings of $113.8 million.
Craig, it may have taken us a little while, but we finally got it right, brother.
You know, there's so many people I need to thank, and it would probably take a phone book to reach us all. But they know me because they're the ones who had the confidence in putting me on all their great horses and making, don't laugh, he was betting on them, right? But really, my foundation my father, he was my movement to here. He knew that I enjoyed the thoroughbred industry. He knew my passion for the horses. He knew I was getting real bad in school. And he'd find me at the racetrack on lunch break in the afternoons. So he decided, you don't want to do your schoolwork? He sent me to the farm. And I wound up on a farm for a few years, and it was the greatest college I could ever have. I learned the horses, but I learned everything about them. Loved it, enjoyed them. That took me into, I found the love in the occupation I wanted to be in. I wasn't lost in the world trying to figure out where the heck I'm going next. I only had one thing on my mind, was the racetrack and the people. They were wonderful to me. They helped me learn. And from there on, when I got to the racetrack and was old enough to ride, because I was there way before, I found out I knew so much about horses that it drew me to people that was willing to help me. And a few of those were trainers like Bose Bond, Joe Pierce, Benny Perkins, Jimmy Crow, my favorite. Not just favorite as a trainer, but as a person, felt like family. He's the one really put my base down to where I can go to a new level. My new level is I moved into New Jersey, lovely place to live, on the ocean, not in a big city. I didn't like the big city thing. I just wanted to be in a place that I enjoyed being, and I could concentrate on what I loved. Monmouth Park was the place. And these are the people that moved me to the next level, because they trusted me with their good horses, and those took me right into New York. And then when I got into the New York area part, I said, well, this is great. This is what you look for in this game, to get it, be as big as you can be and as good as you can be. Well, it did wind up getting real big, because I had people like Sugar, and I can't name you all, because you all know me over the years, Mr. Farish, all of you, the Phipps, that we've all connected at time or another. But New York really wasn't for me. I mean, I was there and loved it, but I didn't like the lifestyle of the traffic and all that. I was so used to country and easy flowing, and made me just feel real relaxed doing my work. And then when I wound up getting in Eclipse, I looked at Jimmy Crow, and he told me, he says, you're going further. Well, he was right, because that put me into, of course, unbridled. I said, you know what? I'm finished in the game. Not finished riding, but my goal has been reached for me, my derby. I said, you know, I don't need nothing from this game no more. I mean, it's most horsemen and people, that's what you dream of, Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Derby. I mean, it's what everybody knows and loves. And when I did create that and wound up winning a Derby, I was grateful enough that I didn't need nothing else. Well, another thing come along. I finally got off the also eligible, and look where I'm at now. And it's funny, it's because when I look around now, and all the people I know, it's just like a flash to me of, I remember winning this for you. And to win for people you work with, and especially people you call family, man, that's a great feeling to ride for them. I mean, Mr. Bob Levy, Cott Campbell. I mean, my fun part there was when I walk out to the paddock. When I get out to the paddock, it was, you didn't have to put the joy in them, the excitement, but I knew here, it wasn't just the excitement for them, and you know, you want to win for your friends, so it was, I knew when they said riders up, it was me and the horse for the next 10 minutes. I was the only one can help make this happen. And the bottom line is, the real hero of it all was the horse. I just stayed out of his way and let him do his things. These trainers are great trainers. You know, they had enough confidence in me taking care of their horse and giving them the opportunity, and made my job easy. But one other thing I like to touch base on that really is the riders that I come up around. You know, I come out of New Jersey and it don't seem, well, you know, it's not California and it's not New York. But when you with riders, Jerry Bailey, Chris Antley, Herb McCauley, Brumfield, Vince Bracali, Julie Crone, I look around today, phew, most of them in the Hall of Fame. Well, what happened to me here? You know, y'all helped teach me, but I'm left out now. But who helped take care of that part was probably Dave Hart, Roger Sutton, John Gasper. They were my agents. They knew me. They knew if I was happy, then we can get things done. And they kept me happy. They knew after so many years of riding, it wasn't quantity I'm looking for. I want the quality. If I'm going to get there, it's going to have to be with the best of them. Well, they did a hell of a job, because whenever I messed up, they knew how to cool it out. Thank God for that. But I'm glad for what you guys did for me. And most important, again, congratulations to all the inductees today, the pillars, because I go way back, Mr. Farish, and you stole some of my line when you started with Kaskaskia and Roger Barber. I said, well, I got to scratch that out. Shug, thanks. Good plug. Thanks for being my friend. Alice, my family, they traveled. My friends, this whole side, they come from all over the states. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing this with me. Whew, I'm almost there. And Miss Campbell, thank you and your family for making it so wonderful for me to work with you. Thank you so much.
Really, one of the great things about this event every year is that we all get to experience this true heartfelt emotion in the speeches of people that are accepting this honor from horse racing. And just one other thing, Craig, you know, about you not liking New York, I do not understand how anybody doesn't like crime, traffic, and high taxes. I don't. What's up with that? And certainly, last and certainly not least, ladies and gentlemen, right here in the front row, one of the great men of the game, James E. Ted Bassett.
A native of Lexington, Kentucky, and a graduate of Yale University, Ted Bassett served as an infantry officer in the 4th Marine Regiment, 6th Division during World War II. Twice wounded during the Okinawa Campaign, Bassett recovered and participated in the initial landing by Allied forces on Japan. He was awarded the Purple Heart and the Presidential Unit Citation. Following the war, Bassett enjoyed a distinguished stint as director of the Kentucky State Police and also spent time as Deputy Commissioner of the state's Department of Public Safety. Bassett got involved in racing in 1968 when he began working for the Keeneland Association, initially as the assistant to Louis Lee Hagen II. 2 years later, Bassett became Keeneland's president, serving in that capacity until 1986. During his tenure, Bassett oversaw more than $100 million in capital improvements to the iconic Lexington track and its sales division. After his tenure as Keeneland president, Bassett transitioned to its chairman of the board. In 2003, Bassett became a Keeneland trustee and eventually a trustee emeritus. From 1988 through 1996, Bassett served as the president of Breeders' Cup Limited. A longtime member of the Jockey Club, Bassett also held positions as president of the Thoroughbred Racing Associations of America and as a trustee for the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame, University of Kentucky Equine Research Foundation, and Transylvania University. He was also chairman of Equibase and the Kentucky Horse Park. Bassett's honors have been numerous and his reputation in the sport pristine, both in America and throughout the world. In 1996, he received the Eclipse Award of Merit, and 2 years later was honored with the Lord Derby Award. He's also been recognized as an honorary member of the Victoria Racing Club of Australia, the Hong Kong Racehorse Owners Association, and the Association of Jockey Clubs of Latin America. He remains the pride of Keeneland and all of racing.
And Ted, this is just another award that you've gotten. You've gotten so many over the years, but at least for this one, you didn't have to fight in the Battle of the Bulge.
Good morning. I'm deeply honored, pleasantly surprised, and forever grateful for this coveted award and being selected in this wonderful historic organization, the Pillars of the Turf. I hope you will bear with me just a very brief moment as I reminisce through meandering over the last half century of a number of organizations. And I want to assure you that all during this time, I never, ever dreamed or thought or wished, thinking I would be standing here in this one place on this day of receiving this coveted award. I want to thank the nominating and selection committee for their due diligence, tolerance, and perseverance, and willingness to help me transfer from a very distant dream, thinking about this coveted award and making it a reality. Thank you very much.
Okay, my boy. Good to see you. You still keep an office at the Keene? By the way, he's not going to stick around too long because he goes to work at his office at Keeneland every day. Still does. Ladies and gentlemen, you have 15 minutes to bet the double. Thank you and have a good day.